Welcome to the Conscious Leadership Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Susan Hobson, and I'm coming at you real quick with this quick introduction because today we have a very special surprise in store for all of our conscious leaders. We have really been answering this call thus far in 2026. As you can see, we are so fired up having all these incredible conversations with our guests, with all the conscious leaders that we've been bringing through the podcast studio. And one of the things that I have really been feeling strongly as we've been pivoting our mission in this direction, changing the way the game's being played through this whole new concept of conscious leadership that we have made our prime focus here on the show, is that, we really have been learning a ton in the intellectual space, right? But we haven't really had a ton of opportunity thus far in 2026 to get into our practice. And so I know for those of you who follow along with my work, you're used to hearing me say, awareness simply must occur and be cultivated before intelligent choice can ever take place or be made possible. And so what we thought would be really neat opportunity for all of you is to bring you this masterclass that I just co-hosted with my co-pilot, Sanja Ralevic. She and I are definitely doubling down in our collaborations to change the way this game's being played through our shared passion for conscious leadership. So she and I actually just hosted this incredible opportunity for our conscious leaders to get in the conscious leadership locker room. Last week, we hosted this masterclass on the conscious leader where we really had the opportunity to bring you behind the locker room doors and get you into practices that we are using in our own leadership coaching trenches on the daily with all of our leaders. You know, one of the biggest themes that we have been looking at on this show is just how many of our experts are predicting this incredible level of change and disruption that's been headed our way with the arrival of AI. That disruption is now here. We're seeing every single day news come out, right? In terms of some of what that is going to mean for the marketplace, in terms of, just AI's capacity to replace certain positions, certain roles, as well as the many opportunities that it's opening up for our creative capacities in terms of how we can really start to find those hidden opportunities for growth in the disruption. But we really have been feeling the call to get you guys into practice with us so that we can help you actually discover how to unlock these practices in your own leadership lane right about now so that you have the opportunity to get into this consciousness training that is actually going to help you cultivate the resources you need to meet the demands of this ever increasing pressure that we are feeling due to the level of change and disruption. You know, future generations coming into this workforce is really compelling us to have to come back to our helms consciously as leaders so that we actually have the ability to respond, right? To be able to meet all of this change and uncertainty in this really curious, creative capacity, right? Which I think you all have heard me say on the show, I believe is why we are all going through the disruption, is so that we all can come back to our human capacity as creatives. I really believe that that is why we're here as human beings after all. So as leaders, we have an incredible opportunity to really lead the charge. You know, we always talk about how the model carries the most weight. And so our people are surely looking to us right about now to know how to feel about all of these changes and all the uncertainty that is so ripe in this world right about now, including in the home or on the home front. And so we believe that these really have become the table stakes here in the leadership development and training world in 2026. We honestly don't know what it's even going to look like for a leader trying to navigate all of this change and disruption and uncertainty unless they understand what it is that they are up against from the neuroscientific standpoint. This really is what conscious leadership's all about after all. It's really about generating as much awareness as we can in terms of how our external environment is impacting our internal environment, right? So that we really can stay consciously at the helm where we're able to lead responsively, resourcefully, adaptively, and ultimately so that we can be those innovative leaders that came here to become leaders during this incredible time in history so that we actually can change the way this game is being played, so that we understand how to lead our people through this next evolution in our business world, in our world at large, in a way that's going to help us co-create a world where we can all thrive. This really is what conscious leadership's all about to me. It's getting us off of that, striving track. It looks like striving from the outside looking in, but really feels like surviving on the inside. Because when we don't understand that pressure and high stakes really can, trigger certain aspects of our brain that can put us into the tunnel, cognitively speaking, then we're not going to understand how to get out of that tunnel. And if we don't understand how to get out of that tunnel, we're not going to be able to make new choice. So the following is the masterclass recording. I'm really feeling called to share it with all of you who so loyally follow along on this journey, on this mission of ours to change this game. I really wanted to give you all the opportunity to get into your practices, your conscious leadership practices. I really draw this inspiration in terms of all this brain training I've been doing for the last 2 decades in my life's work as being the same thing I had to do as a hockey player, right? Playing at the highest levels of high pressure and high stakes. I had to get on the ice and into the gym and get into the mental gym, most importantly, so that I really, was developing the capacity I needed to show up and make it count, to play my biggest impact game every opportunity I had to impact any aspect of my performance. So this is how I think about this masterclass. This is your opportunity to roll up your sleeves, get in that conscious leadership locker room, and get to work so that we can really start to integrate some of these resources on your behalf when the world needs leaders consciously at the helm more than it has ever needed it before, in my humble opinion. So thank you everybody for tuning in again this week. I really hope that you take advantage of this opportunity to get into this practice. I hope you enjoy this masterclass that Sanja Ralevic and I put together last week. We will see you back here next week for another episode of the Conscious Leadership Revolution podcast. Welcome to the Conscious Leadership Revolution podcast, where conscious leaders unite to unlock their highest potential so we can change the way the game is being played. All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm Susan Hobson. I'm joined by my co-host for this evening, Sanja Ralevic. And we are so excited and deeply honored that you made the conscious choice to be here tonight, joining us for this masterclass on the conscious leader. We promise to make that decision count. We've got one heck of a lineup in store for you over the next 75 minutes or so. We're going to do our very best to get you out of here on time. But before we get started, I wanted to give us a little bit of backstory and context in terms of why Sanja and I decided to join forces on our mission to change the way this game is being played through conscious leadership. This is actually our third time collaborating to host one of these conscious community training experiences. And it seems like we are definitely answering the right call in our intuition. We sincerely believe that this has become the table stakes for the modern day leaders development and training. We are in unprecedented levels of change, disruption, instability, and thus uncertainty in our world right now across the board, politically, socially, economically. And experts are only predicting that change and disruption is about to accelerate tenfold due to the arrival of AI and future generations coming into this workforce, which us mothers on the home front and fathers on the home front raising this next generation. We know this next generation cannot be led in unconscious ways, right? So, yeah, times of uncertainty trigger the amygdala, that part of the brain that's responsible for our fight or flight, our stress response. And so, what that can do to a leader is really trap them in the tunnel, cognitively speaking, really drastically diminishing the amount of resources that they can access, which is requisite for being able to show up to these unprecedented times of high pressure and high stakes. And so, when left unchecked and unregulated, this can really reduce a leader to leading in unconscious ways reactively. Things like micromanaging our people or even being sidelined from our missions entirely due to things like burnout. So, yeah, times of unprecedented change require conscious leadership practices so that we can get to and stay at the helm in our self leadership, which means really lead from our prefrontal cortex, the executive part of our brain that gives us access to the resources we need, again, to show up to the demands and pressures of our world right now. And this is what helps us lead from coherence and clarity and creativity, which helps us show up, resourcefully, adaptively, and responsively so that we can really pivot in real-time high-pressure situations, think outside the box, innovate, really find all those hidden opportunities for our growth, and yeah, make really effective solutions for the problems that we face. And the last thing I want to say about this, and the one that I am most passionate about, is that it is absolutely essential during times of uncertainty for us as leaders to be the model that carries the most weight. Our people are looking to us to know how to feel about this uncertainty. And again, for my parents, especially in the homes, we know our kids are looking to us and calibrating our state at almost all times. So, yeah, as a single mother and a daughter who just decided to bring her 84-year-old mother in to live with her for the last stage of her legacy journey, and an entrepreneur of a small Canadian business leading a team right now, as well as showing up in these leadership trenches, helping my leaders navigate all of this uncertainty on the day to day. I don't know where I would be without some of these conscious leadership practices that Sanja and I are so excited to share with you tonight. Like I said, we've got an incredible lineup in store for you, right, Sanja?
Yes, indeed. Hi, everyone. Really nice to see some familiar faces, some new faces. Welcome, welcome. So for those I haven't met, my name is Sanja Ralevic, and we're going to get to know each other a lot more throughout the session tonight. Susan and I were really intentional about how we designed our time here today, because we want to be able to tap into the collective intelligence, right? That's the shared wisdoms and perspectives that can only emerge when we're coming together and learning together. And so today we're going to invite you into some reflections and some interactions so you'll be able to explore and connect in small groups, because we know that's the absolute best way to help accelerate and integrate any new learnings. Because our intent, after all, is to give you the best ROI on your time here tonight. So without further ado, let's jump right in.
Let's get this party started.
So right off the top, what we'd love to hear from you is, in your perspective, from your experience, what makes a good leader? Feel free to just drop the first word that comes to mind right there in the chat. No wrong answers, whatever is sort of that first association that comes top of mind.
Consider this a warm-up drill. Don't be overly critical in your analysis. Just trust what comes to the surface of your consciousness first. That free association game. And yeah, if you don't mind just tossing whatever's coming up in the chat so we can all see. Supportive, vision, lead by example, inspirational, steady, encouraging, authenticity, listening, confidence. Ooh, does anybody notice a through line in these answers thus far? Any brave souls want to call it out? what do we notice is the through line here?
Are any
Empathetic.
of these technical skills?
Yeah, well, I'm sort of
Hmm.
noticing that they're not.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, I think it's fair to see that yeah, leadership really is a set of behaviors. That's how I've been taught to think about it and train on it. And so yeah, you can see a lot of qualities of a really great leader, qualities of behavior, right, Sanja?
Yeah, the states of being, the presence that we bring
Hmm.
to our leadership. So, with that, I'll hand it to you, Susan.
All right. Who's this adorable little girl in Fisher Price roller skates on the left here? This is our heroine's journey. We thought Sonia and I would just give a little bit of this backstory, just in terms of how our paths crossed in the first darn place on our missions to change the game. So yeah, that's me on the left. This is me at 7 years old when I woke up to my first pair of Fisher Price roller skates. And oh yes, folks, you can see I wasted no time before I went down to the basement to gear up in my older brother Mark's hockey equipment. And like a precocious young 7-year-old would, I immediately announced to my family that, yeah, this is the moment I decided that I too would want to play in the NHL like my older brother. I wanted to play for the Boston Bruins. That was my team at the time. And it didn't take long before my dad and my brother giggled and laughed and said, ho, 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 ho. You can't play in the NHL. You're a girl. Girls can't do that. So curiously, I looked at them and I said, okay, well, what can I do with this sport of hockey? And they said, you can get your education paid for. And so that was what I did. I made that my new North Star and aspiration in my hockey career. I remember asking my dad a little bit later on down the line, once I started to become obvious that I had a little talent, what the best school was, or best, education I could get out of my hockey was. And he told me that that would be a school called Princeton. So fast forward to 14 years old, I was well on my way. I got awarded a full scholarship to this prestigious boarding school down in New England to play hockey. And once thrust into that hyper competitive condition, far away from everything I knew that was familiar, I was diagnosed with a life threatening autoimmune disease and told that I would have to give up hockey forever. I'd have to move home and give up my scholarship because I'd be in and out of hospitals the rest of my life. Again, still having that precocious, attitude. I immediately went into my research mode that summer. I actually found a case study of one of my favorite NHLers at the time, Theo Fleury, who had the same autoimmune disease that I had. I printed that bad boy off. I took it into my specialist's office in my father's office, and I said, I'm going back. And so, flash forward into my high schooling years. I had been told that this disease and the flare ups of this disease were brought on by stress, but I didn't think I was stressed. I just thought I was super motivated, right? And so, even though I'd go in and out of the hospital 2 or 3 times a year with these super intense flare ups, I'd lose 10 to 15 pounds each round. And in true high achiever, all or nothing fashion, come right out of those hospital stays, pedal to the metal, staying up all night to catch up on my studies and breaking into the gym early to bulk back up for the ice. And so, although I was doing a really good job of masking my stress, I was able to get as far as Princeton. I was actually recruited to go to Princeton, and yeah, I can only describe that experience as my second and most cataclysmic brick wall moment. This was when I went from being this big fish in, a small pond to what felt like this little minnow in a giant ocean. I mean, overnight went from lots of ice time, scoring lots of goals to bench rider of the century my first season, as well as getting A's in the classroom to C's and D's for the first time in my life. And all this while my father, who had kind of been that compass setting the targets for me to knock out, was suddenly diagnosed with terminal cancer and would pass away the summer after my freshman year. And so this is when my imposter syndrome exploded all over the place for my classmates and my teammates to see. I literally remember having my finger this close to the eject button. And this would be the moment where, in the first time in my high performance ascension journey, I was introduced to the concept of self leadership. I was introduced to the concept of, yeah, my mindset and the role that my mindset played in my performance. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to flash forward through this part of the story and share this a little bit more context when we get into some of our presentation later on tonight. But the moral of the story is that once I learned to take my power back from the environment, and I learned to do that through regulating my nervous system and consciously leading myself, this is where I started to step into more and more portals of possibility for my potential. I ended up, going from bench rider of the century my first year to being one of the leading scorers by my second year, from C's and D's in the classroom to being on the national dean's list by my sophomore year. And then by the time I graduated from Princeton, I was actually able to play for the very first professional women's hockey league, which is one of my proudest points in my legacy journey. Now we're selling out the Bell Center, which is just so amazing. Makes me cry every time I see it. But yeah, then, coming out of pro hockey, I was able to open my practice downtown Toronto on Bay Street as a 20-something-year-old young entrepreneur. I was able to become a mother, which my specialist also told me would never be possible with my disease. I was able to go into remission once I became a mother, not having any flare-ups since she was born. And yeah, ultimately, I think it was during my time down on Bay Street when I was showing up in service on this mission to bring everything I'd learned in my experiences in my ascension journey to my practice of serving high achievers, showing them how to become high performers through this self-leadership we're here to learn about today. In fact, that's when I first crossed paths with you, Sanja. Do you remember back in the day downtown when you
Yeah, you
first
know,
walked through my door?
I always marvel at the fact that we've had such different starting points and how our journeys were actually, quite parallel and then intertwined in this way that we sit here today. So my little picture there is 5-year-old Sanja, taken in a country that no longer exists, Yugoslavia. So we were having a nice summer with my grandparents, my parents, and I. And so that picture marks sort of, I think, a few months after everything changed for our family. So there started to be quite a lot of political issues in the country, and so quite a lot of disruption and uncertainty, and it wasn't safe necessarily anymore, especially my mom being 7 months pregnant with my sister. So my family and I, we came to Canada. We immigrated to Canada. And that was actually, obviously, I didn't know it at the time. I probably didn't even understand fully what was happening. But that was something that really marked me in terms of the values that I carried into my life. So, growing up, seeing my parents work really hard to build a new life from scratch, learn the language, understand, the job market, take care of 2 little kids without any support. Seeing the hustle and the grind and the value of just work hard, results above anything else. That is what I picked up, right? And so it served me pretty well. I think, going through school and always being on the dean's list during university and landing my, dream job in biopharmaceuticals. And now fast forward to me working in this small biopharma company, very much akin to like a startup. So we have, high demands, aggressive targets, very low resources. And of course, that's phenomenal for me because give me a challenge and let's see what I can do. And from the outside, it looked great because I was advancing in my career. I was traveling a lot for work. But on the inside was a different story that at the time I didn't really understand, right? Because I was not listening to some of those signals. My body was telling me like, slow down. You're thriving and living on stress. And so, fast forward to me burning out completely. So when I say burning out, I mean 2.5 weeks in the hospital, being told by my doctors that if I don't change, how I'm living, that most likely I'm going to have a very serious GI surgery. And so, when I'm sidelined like that, absolutely nothing else to do, you have some time to think. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to figure this out. They said stress is a big contributor to me being here in the hospital. I'm going to figure this out. And so, I do all the meditation, I do the yoga, I take the most nutritious and healthy diets. But what, you start to realize is that if you're doing all these things, but you're still in that fight or flight, right? You're still in that upregulated state, none of that is going to have much of an effect on what you want, on healing, on getting better. And so that's about the time that I walk into Susan's office. And for the first time, I learned about state management. I learned about the fact that we have control actually over how we want to feel versus the environment always controlling or sort of indicating our experience and therefore our emotion. And so that propels me deeper into looking at biofeedback. And biofeedback is what I ended up really diving deep into, which is just this very intimate understanding between the brain, the body, and consciousness. And so I go back into the workforce, same environment, same demands, but now I'm different, right? Because I'm resourced up and I'm operating and reacting and responding to all those stressors and all of those demands differently. And so that ends up being sort of this aha moment for me that not only am I keeping my health intact, but I'm actually being way more effective. I'm being more productive. I'm seeing my career advance and advance. And so, it becomes sort of this real obsession in terms of seeing how far I can get with learning this and with operating in this way. And of course, then noticing that a lot of people around me were living in this stress mode. A lot of people around me were struggling in similar ways. And over time, this has become my life's work in terms of helping and showing others, how to really step into that self-authority. So with that said, we'll jump into what actually is this conscious leadership? Why don't we define it? Why don't we level set, Susan?
Let's start with the word leadership, since that's the most obvious one in the room. Leadership. Leadership's all about influence, right? How we influence ourselves, which, as it turns out, packs the biggest punch in terms of how we show up and orient in the world and impact the world around us, our relationships, the people that we influence there, as well as the greater community or system that we are a part of. And to add the word conscious into that mix, conscious just really refers to the amount of awareness that we actually can generate in regards to how we're leading ourselves, how we're orienting and leading others, and again, within the system that we are leading within.
Beautiful. So as a way of supporting you all into this experience, we're going to invite you to just take a brief moment of reflection here. So we'll need something to write with and a notepad, a piece of paper, and just feel free to type ready in the chat once you have something to write with so we know we can jump in.
Hopefully you saw our primer and reminder in the email we sent out, asking for us to have a notebook handy, but if not, just grab a piece of paper or something that you can, or even if you have a notepad that you can type on your computer, that would work too.
Yeah, and as we go through the questions, really just whatever comes to the top of your mind, whatever is the first association. This is sort of just a quick self-awareness exercise to really get us grounded here in the moment, because I don't know if many of you are like me, but hustling and bustling during the day, all day, sometimes our mind can be in all the different places. So we just want ourselves to ground ourselves here.
Yeah, and this is not a test. No perfectionism needed. You're not being graded on the answer. So just trust whatever comes up in association first with these questions. Oftentimes in neuroscience, we say that that's the most reliable data, is our first association. So no changing your answers after you have them. Trust what comes up.
All right. So Here we go. We want to know when you're at your best, what words describe how you tend to show up? So you can think about this from the perspective of your energy. What is your energy like on your best days? Your mindset, the thoughts coming through, your communication, your presence. How are you interacting with others? How are you making decisions? Now, on a difficult or stressful day, what words describe how you tend to show up? And you can think about it from those same sort of criteria, your energy, the thoughts, communication, how you're interacting, the quality of your decisions. And now, are there any patterns that you notice lead to your best days? And any patterns that lead to the more stressful days? Is there anything that tends to trigger the shift? Perhaps there's a common theme. Perhaps it's situational, environmental, perhaps it's a person or people. And now, if you could lead from composure and clarity more consistently, what impact might that have first on you, and then on your career or your business, your team, or your family? All right, so if you're still jotting things down, that's totally okay. But at the same time, we'd love to bring in some of your voices. So if anyone would be willing to share a word or two about what stood out for them from this exercise. Perhaps what you found meaningful, any insight you gained. Feel free to unmute yourself and just speak, or also drop it in the chat. That works too.
We can share.
Hey, honey, how are
Hello. Good. How
you?
are you?
Oh, nice to see
You
you.
too.
Thanks for coming.
Of course. So it might sound really simple, but I notice like when I show up at my best is when I have a good night's sleep. And when I am having a difficult or stressful day, a lot of that could be contributed to like a lack of sleep or not being able to exercise or like just feel it like getting a call from my kid's school or like things that might be out of my control in that sense. But sleep, I've been paying more attention to how big of a role sleep really plays for me.
I think that's very common answer for high achievers. We definitely struggle with the sleep bus, right? And then you sprinkle in some aging and some hormones to that, and you know how that goes. That's definitely one of those areas that can feel like it's most out of our control. Definitely. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of
Anybody
course.
resonate with that?
Yeah,
Getting
I'll
tripped
build
up
on
by the
that.
uncontrollables? Gino.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hey there.
Gino.
Yeah, I'll build on that because I had a similar response, but I also added hydrated, regulated, relaxed. Like I think it's the whole preparation rather than getting really up for something, actually get into flow and get ready to be up at the right time.
I love that answer so much, and I want to rip it apart, but I know we're on a shot clock.
And it's both responses are so aligned with what we're going to
Yeah,
discuss.
totally teeing
Yeah.
us up. Thank you
Yeah.
both for your contributions.
All right. So we'll jump in. Take it away,
All
Rose.
right. So, one of the conscious leadership practices that I'm really known for when I lead leadership locker rooms is something called the mindful minute. I've got a couple of you I can see in the crowd right now who are just as in love with that conscious leadership practice as I am. And this is a practice where we learn to go inside in our self leadership to self regulate before going outside, focus on, how we're leading others. And this really is all about the self leadership and getting to that step of depth known as the nervous system. So when I heard that Miss Sonia over here was stepping into her leadership coaching mastery with her heart math coherence practices, I knew that collaboration was definitely destined for us. And that's because, like I just said, her and I, we are both on this mission to change the way the game is being played through conscious leadership practices like these that go to that step of depth known as self-leadership. Believe it or not, this here in 2026 is still a huge point of differentiation in the way that we train our leaders. But also, specifically, we both go to that step of depth known as the nervous system when we're working with our leaders because, yeah, we are both aligned in that we are backed by neuroscience, data, and research. And this really is proven to be the best practices, like I said, because leadership is a set of behaviors, and we don't understand what behavior modification even looks like in a long term sustainable way if you're not going as deep as the nervous system. So the research really backs us up. There's this wonderful study that was released by the Harvard Business Review where they looked at the whopping 365 billion annual global dollars spent on this stuff and found that a whopping 75% of it was still rated completely ineffective, meaning it did not impact behavior modification in a sustainable way. And that's because the majority of this marketplace is still focused on the intellectual point of intervention. And yeah, like I said, most of it is focused on how the leader's orienting externally with their people, not focused on training the leader's mindset, which is where our differentiation lies, where our point of alignment lies too, is that we both focus on training the leader's mindset, the leader's perspective that really is the thing that governs how they feel emotionally, all that neurochemistry flooding through the nervous system, which, as it turns out, is the key to unlocking the most effective best practices in terms of those leadership behaviors listed on the right in our chat box. Um, Let's go on to the next slide.
Yeah, and
Oh,
I'll just
yes,
jump
you
in.
had
I'll say I
something to
think
add to that.
where Susan and I, when we got together, we very quickly realized that the current demands of the environment, the current uncertainty, really needed us to go one step further, right? One step deeper, and that's where we're bringing in the biofeedback, the coherence training, the consciousness training, and using the most cutting edge tools to do it, which we'll show in a little bit. Because some of these self-regulation skills we're going to cover today are actually used by Navy SEALs, Olympians, some of the elite performers. And so, we like to say if these skills are trained for hostage negotiations, we think they're equally valuable for leaders making, those high stakes decisions under pressure.
Okay, so I promised to tell you the rest of that story to save time. I knew that I'd be digging into it here when I talked about this inverted U theory that I still remember learning for the first time my freshman year playing Division I NCAA hockey at Princeton. Yeah, this was like the first time that like I said, I'd hit that brick wall. The first time I realized I was running on imposter syndrome, and that imposter syndrome blew up all over the place for my teammates and my classmates to see. And this was the first time, it was right after my father passed away, when somebody actually said to me, "You might want to talk to somebody about how you're feeling, Hobson." And I remember that what I learned in those first sessions was that 90% of my performance was actually mental. And I mean, if you can imagine thousands and thousands of hours busting my butt in the gym and on the ice, unconsciously leading myself into all those training sessions. And nobody had ever mentioned that the majority of what was showing up on that ice was mental. And that was because nobody had ever taught me that the ticket to my sustainable peak state and flow really lay in my nervous system. And so this is, the first time I actually was exposed to this whole concept of self-leadership. I honestly had always looked to other people to tell me what to do. You heard in my story that my dad was kind of that compass for me. And so, what I discovered and is displayed in this inverted U theory is that performance happens almost like the pedometer in our car. If you can imagine the lower axiom being the arousal in our nervous system, almost like the RPMs, right, in our cars, is that, when you actually increase arousal in their nervous system up until about the midway point, performance enhances. But what happens when pressure increases and you don't know how to regulate it or down regulate it, that you actually blow right past that peak performance state and end up in the diminishing side of that equation. And so this was me. In those sessions, I learned that I was in fact running on hyperarousal, not motivation. This in fact was anxiety that was caused by the initial wound to my self-worth when I was told that I inherently was not good enough as a female. That, to my little 7-year-old brain meant that I was going to have to go into super compensation mode, right? So that I could prove that I belonged, and I could prove that I belonged by becoming a hardcore perfectionist and people pleaser, so I could control the external outcomes as a supplement for my self-worth, all that external validation that I was trying to seek by controlling those external outcomes. But turns out the higher you climb in your ascension journey, the more the pressure builds. And by the time you land in top 1% environments like this, hyper competitive, high stakes, that becomes an impossibility, controlling anything outside of yourself. And so this is where I learned how to see myself. This is where I learned to step to the helm consciously in my self-leadership so I could see myself as the authority in my nervous system and thus my decision making. I did this by learning to come into alignment with all the controllables, learning to intrinsically validate the value that was always inside of me, that I always had to bring to the classroom or the rank, and to really just learn to trust that and surrender that when I trusted controlling the controllables, in the process, that the best outcomes would naturally occur. This is where I learned to say, show up in my flow, predictably, sustainably, and reliably. And so this is what we're here to work on with you all tonight, to really show you just some examples of how we can start to take our power back from our external environment so that we're not being led by our emotions, in this case, being led by my fears and anxieties, but instead leading ourselves via our intuition, our internal sense of what is true and best and right, those intrinsic values that really should be the thing setting the course in terms of the process of growth that we go after. So Sanja, do you want to tee us up so that we can actually start to learn how to get into that flow or coherence, as you call it?
So exactly. I mean, if we want to learn to reliably operate from that peak state Susan was talking about, we got to do more than just talk about it, right? So we're going to do a short experiment together. It's only going to take a few minutes. And so as we begin, I'm going to ask you to think of a situation in your work or your life right now that requires some clarity. Perhaps a decision that has to get made, a conversation, that needs to be had that may be difficult, any challenge that you're navigating. But I will say, for the first time doing this exercise, I invite you not to choose, the biggest thing that you're up against right now. And instead, just something that is causing you a little bit of challenge, a little bit of stress. And as you think about that situation or that challenge, take a moment just to close your eyes and become aware that you notice how you're feeling in your body as you think about this problem. Do you feel any tension anywhere? And also think about, how are you thinking about that situation? Is your mind scattered? Or perhaps it's neutral? There's no right or wrong. Any emotions that are coming up for you as you're thinking about the problem. And then just open your eyes and just jot it down. Any of those observations that you had, just jot them down in front of you. So here comes the experiment. This technique that we're going to try together, it's called quick coherence. And it's actually used to shift our nervous system into a more balanced state. And so that's what coherence on a very, very basic level means, is balance. And so there's 2 steps to this. First, I'm going to guide you through a type of breathing where we place our focus and attention on the chest area or the heart area. And then we're going to bring in an uplifting, positive, regenerative feeling. And the best way that I can tell you to do this is just to think about someone or something or a place or a memory that you have that you associate good, positive emotions with. And it's less of a cognitive exercise and more of an immersive exercise where, when I'm thinking about my puppy, that brings me joy. I'm thinking about, what it's like playing with him, touching his fur, his little wet nose, when he's kissing me. What are all those emotions and what are those visceral experiences that I have when I'm with him? So I'll give you a moment just to ground into something that brings you an uplifting emotion. It doesn't have to be joy. It can be peace. It can be appreciation, a gratitude. Okay, so we'll step into our exercise now. I'm going to invite everyone to close their eyes if they're not currently closed. and to start to relax your face, relax your jaw. Start to feel the support of your chair behind your back. Notice the support of the ground underneath your feet. And now bring your focus into the area of the heart. Imagine that your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area. With every inhale, you imagine your breath flowing in, and with every exhale, your breath flowing out of your chest area. Starting to breathe a little slower and a little deeper than usual. And as you continue to breathe, deepen each breath. Slow it down. And I'll let you find an easy rhythm that feels comfortable for you. And if your mind wanders, just gently refocus your attention in the area of the heart, in your chest area. I'll ask you to place one hand over the chest to help you anchor as you continue to breathe. As you continue this heart-focused breathing, make an attempt to experience an uplifting, regenerative feeling. It can be appreciation or care or peace or calm for someone or something in your life. And continue to breathe and feel. And breathe and feel. Now notice how your body feels now. Notice how your mind feels. Now, while you're maintaining that breathing rhythm, bring that same challenge or problem that we were talking about earlier back into your awareness. And just notice if anything has shifted in your body, in your mind, in how you're thinking about the problem or challenge. And as you continue this rhythm of breathing, start to slowly open your eyes. And I invite you to jot down anything perhaps that's come up during the exercise or any of these observations you had. Now, I know for some, the first time you do this, you may not have felt any shift, right? That's because it's just like going to the gym, right? You don't go one time and you already build a muscle. So it takes a little practice, a little sort of nuance in terms of getting into this state. But for those that did, feel free to drop in the chat or just quickly come off mute and let us know if how that landed for you. Maybe we're all still in Zen mode. So what we did just now, what we experienced is actually measurable. It's measurable. And so we use a small coherence sensor that just clips onto our ear that's actually measuring the level of balance in our nervous system. So let me show you what I mean. So this is a session that I did earlier, and it's showing you the app that's connected to that sensor. You'll see there at the bottom the coherence level. So the different colors correlate to the level of coherence or balance I was in. Now in the middle, you see the heart rate variability graph. What that is, in the most simplest term, HRV, heart rate variability, is the difference between each beat of our heart. And so here you see at the very, very beginning, I was quite agitated because you see the HRV pattern is a little bit rigid and raggedy. You see that there's some chaos going in my system. I think most likely I just gotten off the phone with my mother-in-law. That does it reliably, like clockwork. This is what my internal state looks like after a nice little convo. And however, you see at the 45-second mark, I'm able to get in control of my nervous system, and I'm able to bring my system into balance. And you see that, but you see the HRV graph showing more of that smooth wave-like pattern. Okay, and I know that HRV is something we hear a lot about, but it's a lot more than just a fitness metric, right? It's the window into your nervous system's flexibility and your body's ability to self-regulate. So it's like when we're just tracking HRV, it's like stepping on the scale, versus when we're training our HRV, it's like actually going to the gym. And so you see my coherence level rising there at the bottom, that a higher percentage of the time. Now I'm in the green. And so there you go. There you go, mother-in-law dearest. I was able to bring myself back. But what we want to show really quickly is that, that level of coherence, that level of balance isn't just accidental. It can really be deliberately created. And it's a big part of, what we mean when we say leading consciously, right? Because one of the most important things from this slide, we're just going to show you a little bit of what's going on in your body when we did that exercise, right? So, we wanted to bring you in with an open mind and bring you in through that experience. And for some of you that have never done this, it may have felt a little bit bizarre. You might have wondered, why are these two ladies making me do this? So one of the most important things to understand here about what's going on in our body when we're working with coherence practices is that our heart and our brain are constantly in communication through our nervous system. And there's a humongous amount of information coming from the heart up into the brain. and actually more than the brain down into the heart. And those signals change depending on the emotional state that we're in. So when we're in these states of frustration, overwhelm, or even quieter states like impatience, irritation, the rhythm of the heart becomes erratic, like you see here and like you saw in my example in the red. And so when those rhythms are jagged, right, the brain receives these chaotic signals. And when the brain receives chaotic signals, it's harder to think clearly, to regulate emotions, make good decisions. But you see by the blue, when the heart rhythm becomes more smooth and ordered, right, what we know is called coherence, then the entire system is going to synchronize. And in that state, that incoherent state, that critical thinking, creativity, decision-making all come online, right? So scientists call this cortical facilitation, because that prefrontal cortex is now more fully integrated and available to us. So as you can see, even though that experience that we just did together felt relaxing, this is not a relaxed or meditative state, right? As we like to describe it, it's a calm heart and an alert, focused mind. And it's why it's so powerful that we can actually intentionally create this state and optimize, like make ourselves smarter, essentially, in these high pressure moments. And it's why we see a lot of the military, a lot of Olympians, a lot of elite performers starting to use these tools. So I know that was a lot, so I want to see who's picking up what I'm throwing down over here. We know that it goes one step further than just us and us feeling better and performing better. We know that coherence is actually contagious. So when we have multiple people in a coherent state and someone incoherent enters the space, that person is naturally going to shift towards coherence. We know that their heart rhythms begin to synchronize. And so this reinforces a really key principle of conscious leadership, which is that our state directly influences those around us, right? How we show up has a ripple effect on everyone we interact with. And so consciousness training, coherence training, it's the foundation of effective leadership, because when we're training the nervous system, essentially our internal control system that's responsible for all that stuff on the outside, right? All the results that we're after. So you've done a little experiment, but you've gotten a little information. But Susan, I think you have a question for them.
Yeah, what I think we wanted to do is actually get you all into breakout groups now, right? So we had some feedback from our last couple events, and this was by far the unanimous feedback that we got, is that you want more time to connect and resonate. So I hope it's okay that we break you all out into, I think we said groups of 3, right?
Yeah, so some groups will have groups of 3, some will have 2. We're asking you to reflect on this question. What new idea or insight has been most meaningful for you today? And the way it'll work is you'll be in groups of 2 or 3. You'll have 7 minutes in total in the group. And so each person will take a turn sharing what stood out for them in their reflections, right, from the top of the call until now, whatever feels true and comes up for you. And then after each share, the other 2 are simply going to reflect back, what they heard. If there's something that felt meaningful, something that resonated with you, something that felt important, and then we'll call you back in, and you'll notice a pop-up that's going to redirect you back from the breakout room into the main room, and we'll be here waiting for you. So I'm going to invite you to have fun. And let me know if anyone has any questions before we send you off.
Is everybody clear on the instructions going in, or does anybody have any questions about what we're looking for you to do? Or was that clear? I'm just going through all the faces to see. Everybody looks good. Thank you, Chloe. Happy you're here. Everybody's good, right? Ooh, Loretta. Hi, thumbs up. Terry, you're good? Okay, good. I think we're good to go. Let's break them out so we can stay on time, as promised. Michelle needs a group.
Michelle,
We're going to be her partner, maybe. Are we going to be her partner?
no, she's gone. Yeah, she had to
Oh.
accept. That's why.
Oh, I see. Should I press pause on the record?
If you're going to remember to record.
For all of our folks who couldn't make it.
7 minutes passed like that.
Isn't that funny how that happens, Loretta? When you're in flow, you know. No sense of time or space. That's what I love most about this coherent state. The shot clock just winds down and you don't even notice because you're so engaged.
Welcome back.
All right. Is that everybody? Or are we still waiting on a few?
Yep, we got
Okay.
Yep.
So what we'd like to do now is bring 2 or 3 voices into this collective conscious locker room space. So we have a chance to resonate and maybe just share a sentence or two in regards to anything that came up either in your own reflections or your teammates' reflections, anything that inspired you or that you resonated with perhaps. Let's end on a good note, folks. Let's get some voices on the mic that maybe we haven't heard from tonight.
I can go.
Oh, Scott felt me staring at him. Thank
right.
you, sir.
Cornered.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, all good. Great to see everybody. And I don't know if you guys planned it that way, but clearly it felt like you were putting the couples in the same breakout room together because Michelle and Ryan and Matt and I had a good session together.
It was all random.
They're random.
Luck of the draw.
Yeah, luck of the draw. Okay. Cool. But I think we in our group we talked about the inverted U, and that was also the first. Michelle brought it up, but it was also the first time I had seen it, and it was super simple and easy to resonate with, just because I feel like many of us, I think, always taught throughout our journey that if you're not running hard and fast, you're you're lazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you see it on the meter and you realize, oh wow, so when I'm running hard and fast, I'm overshooting, right? Like that's just a kind of a very simple diagram to explain what the hell's going on. And so that was super helpful. And the way that relates to I love that you guys started with your journeys and how the that journey brings you to the place where you have to run fast, and then you have to realize, okay, you got to pull it back in order to actually perform at your peak. And it's super simple, but so difficult, right? So that's how that all resonated for me.
I'm so happy to hear that, Scott. Yeah, this is why I love the inverted U. For me, I had to see it in that simplistic of a term for me to really create the right associations in terms of my need for speed. I didn't
Yes,
believe it when they told me you speed up by slowing down, Hobson. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Right?
exactly.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm glad that that's useful. It's just the way to think about our beats per minute. We're looking at our HRV, right? It's kind of like our RPMs in the car. So that's hopefully something that people can run with. Thank you, Scott, for your share. Anybody else?
I could maybe jump in.
Yay. Thank you, Chloe.
What was interesting for me is like at the beginning when you guys asked, what effects or what patterns lead to your best or worst days, and for me it was how other people decide to show up. If they decide to not show up as their full selves, well, then that puts more on me just with where I am. So then the last kind of message there being that our state influences those around us. Like it just rings true very much for me, and the one kind of thing that's been impactful for me in my job over the last 4 years is when one of my colleagues show up, and he's one of those, he's a very conscious leader himself. And I was just like, finally, I have a partner in this. And so we try influence that way. So it was an interesting thing to kind of have that validated a little bit with kind of the science background there. And yeah, just how to kind of think more in that kind of mindset and kind of approaching things going forward. So that was, for me, it was just kind of interesting, that full circle moment that I wasn't expecting. So.
Yay, I love a good full circle moment. And I feel like that's the most jaw-dropping part of being in this leadership development space is that we don't learn about like really foundational facts like that, right? In terms of how our state affects other states, and especially when the leader's the model that carries the most weight, that picture that you shared where one incoherent person comes into the room. I think it can be the opposite when you have an incoherent leader, right? Or a leader that is upregulated. It can also have that type of effect on the room around them, right? So definitely powerful to realize that, yeah, that's why we say leadership starts with self-responsibility, right? Because that's where we can become powerfully responsible, and that benefits everybody around us. One last opportunity, just because it's so fun resonating with our teammates before we let everyone go. I'll give one more opportunity for one more brave soldier who wants to answer the final call to courage. Anybody? Anybody?
No, I'm going to take this opportunity to take a little selfie of us. If everyone wants to give me a nice little smile.
Thanks for remembering. Did you get it? Oh,
Yeah,
there it is.
got
The
it.
team shot. That'll be our team roster shot. Okay, so if nobody else wants to share, we'll move on to our last slide and our last exercise for the night before we send you off to bed. Nice and coherent. All right, so I'm going to lead us in this final visualization exercise. So that's right, folks, we're going to visualize, which means we can't have our eyes open and be in this room. I'm going to take you into the portal now. So let's sit back in our chairs and let's get nice and relaxed. Let's shut our eyes. Let's go inside. And let's just meet our breath where it's at. Let's just notice the quality of our breath in this moment. Is it deep? Is it shallow? Is it fast or is it slow? And let's engage our conscious mind in intentionally slowing the breath down so we can come back into that coherent space. And as we start to really surrender to the moment, I'm going to take us into the time machine all the way up and as far up and to the right as we possibly can time travel all the way to the rocking chair. And I want you to imagine you in your rocking chair before that shot clock runs out. And I want you to imagine that you are in your favorite spot on planet Earth. For me, that's me on my porch at my cottage, looking out over the lake. But wherever that is for you, I just want you to imagine as you're rocking in that rocking chair that you see all your loved ones in the yard. I want you to picture all the significant people in your life, especially the ones that you know you've had an impact on in your legacy journey. And as you look at the faces of all your loved ones and significant people in that yard, I want you to notice just how you have impacted their journey, how you showed up in conscious ways, making conscious choices aligned with your values, and really noticing how that ripple affected into the experiences of all your loved ones. And as you're noticing the impact that you made in that ripple effect of decision making, really noticing how that makes you feel. Really honing in on the feelings that show you made it count. With the time and the energy and the focus that you invested on your mission as a conscious leader, just noticing the feelings that leave you feeling most fulfilled in that rocking chair. And as you're starting to feel the feelings that show up in association with all those highly impactful decisions that you made in alignment with your values, just put your hand on your heart or your chest and really anchor that feeling in deeply. So that you can remember what this conscious leadership journey is all about, so that you can come back to this intrinsic source of motivation, knowing that that's always inside you and that you can access it via this feeling right now as you anchor that one last time into your heart. Now let's take one deep breath, really locking it in as a collective. Letting it all go. And starting to gently come back into your body and back into your room, the room that you're sitting in right now, back into your chair, noticing your feet firmly planted on the ground. And then opening this up one last time to see if anybody wants to share any reflections or anything that came up that they found significant or valuable, or maybe even just whether or not that's a useful exercise for you to take with you.
You can say something.
Yay, thanks, Meta.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say it's like sort of a relief in a way, because it's really just up to us to do this. Like, we don't need permission or more time, or we just really need to take responsibility and take charge of ourselves for taking the time to do the breathing, for example.
I
That's
love that
beautiful, Meta.
answer. Oh
That's-
my gosh, it's so true. That's why I love the word responsibility in the context of leadership. Just saying, we actually become powerfully responsible. It's very empowering, even though our associations with that word are a little busted up sometimes. What were you going to say, Sanja?
No, I mean, I feel like you put it so well, Meta, because it's empowering, but it's also sort of understanding that so much of the time we give our power away to all the external circumstances, and then now realizing that, yeah, you don't need anyone's permission to take it back, right? Everything that you need is inside you, and it's just a little bit of understanding, a little bit of knowledge about how our body works, right? This machinery we've been given, our mind and our body, and then just like utilizing it to take back and to do what you want and to get the results that you want.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. Thank you for sharing.
No worries.
Yeah, hopefully we're all leaving this locker room seeing ourselves as the authority in our self-leadership now. That is definitely the impact we're trying to make. I know when Sanja and I do this exercise in the rocking chair, that's what we envision is going to be our legacy someday, right? In terms of our daughters and our granddaughters and grandsons, is like, we really envision a world where they are thriving because they're teaching these conscious leadership practices in school, and they're teaching them in the locker rooms, and they're right off the draw is what I imagine in terms of the possibilities that lie through this conscious leadership portal. So we
Yeah,
can,
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll add a point to that because
we
that
know.
visualization
Yeah.
was really powerful for me because
Oh,
you
good.
start a discussion like this thinking that leadership applies at the organizational level or in business,
Hmm.
and then you see all these people in your life, right? So it's human leadership. It's impacting others and helping them to have a more fulfilled life, and then you have that as well. So I like that a lot of the people that came up were nowhere near the business world. Like they were just humans in my life. So it's powerful.
Oh,
Mm,
To give is to receive, right, Gino? Like our
love,
dear Dr. Joe says, to give is
yeah.
to receive. Yeah, that's beautiful.
and I love to end on that note because I think conscious leadership is the humanity in how we
Mm.
influence our world and one another in this world. And with AI about to accelerate, we got to hang on to the humanity in terms of how we're showing up in this world and relating to this world, and even in the business context, right? I think it's going to be more crucial than ever that we have conscious practices like this. Yes, even in the boardroom. You heard me say I do it right off the draw when I work with my leadership teams. I'm not afraid because it's the proof is in the pudding, right? When we actually do these practices, it's visceral. And so that's our final place that we want to land this plane is please take that inspiration out into our world. Sanja and I believe this is what the world needs more than almost anything right now is leaders to step consciously to the helm, right? And I think, yeah, we definitely learned about how much power we have in terms of the energy that we carry into any room. And listen, everybody's a leader because after tonight, we're all leading ourselves. So go spread that ripple effect. As you can see, we've got an opportunity where you can sign up for our new conscious leadership community. This is absolutely free. We're just doing this mailing list so that we can keep you updated in terms of all the future conscious leadership experiences that we have up our sleeve, right, Sanja? We've got a really
Mhm.
deep toolbox. These are just a couple of practices that we wanted to kind of whet the appetite with. But yeah, like we said, this is what the world needs more than anything is leaders to be consciously at this helm. So we are definitely inspired to continue to curate and co-create these types of conscious leadership training experiences for all of you. So if you join that list, you'll be the first to know in terms of any future events that we have planned.
Yeah, and I think, a key part here is the community, right? So we don't envision, ourselves moving through this disruption alone. I think those that, come together in community are going to be able to build on that collective intelligence we talked about at the top of the call. And to be able to leverage, because Susan and I, we're sort of like your guides on the side, right? We're not, you're stepping away from the sage on the stage mentality and approach, and we really want to solicit and empower each other and celebrate each other and help us all move through this, and see it as an opportunity to grow and evolve personally and as a community and as a system. So yeah, we hope you'll join us.
Does anybody have any final questions or remarks or anything before we let us go? We're almost on time, 9 minutes over, but that's not bad, I think, for a live event. Does anybody have any final questions or anything they'd like to say?
Just a comment that thank you so much for the opportunity. It was so good. I am
Oh,
very anxious lately for different reasons, and I feel much better right now and more
no.
energized.
I'm so grateful that you came tonight, and I'm so grateful that you're noticing such a shift. And I implore you to continue using this practice because I definitely know what you're up against in terms of the pressures and demands. So thank you, Loretta, for sharing and for
Thank
being
you.
here. Anybody else?
Anita, thank you, Chloe.
Thank you, everybody. If nobody else has anything, please, 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 don't be a stranger. Come find us on the sidelines if anybody. There's nothing Sanja and I love more these days than having conscious conversations with leaders. So I hope that we will see you all again. Thank you so much for being here. Anything else you want to say, Sanja, before we let him go?
This for me was a wonderful experience. So thank you for joining us and letting us play a little bit and explore a little bit. And we'd love to hear from you even after the session if you've any thoughts. Absolutely, feel free to reach out.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you both. Bye-bye.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
night. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.